London Taxi Rush Hour is a terrible, terrible game brought to you by Data Design Interactive, who were infamous for their shovelware titles on the Wii, though their career with shovelware started much earlier on the PS2. Now, shovelware could thrive on both the PS2 and Wii, but for very different reasons. Shovelware thrived on the PS2 because it was the console of the 6th generation, and it even outsold the PS3 and Xbox 360 well into their lifespans. And because the console was so popular, it was almost guaranteed that somebody somewhere would buy your product. And if you make a game cheap enough, somebody somewhere buying your product is as good as everybody buying your product. On the Wii, however, the audience you had to cater to was a little more specific. You had to make your game child-friendly, and it better include motion controls. Those are the two components you need for a good Wii shovelware game. But if that seems a little bit too high for you, like you can't quite reach that bar, there are lower tiers of shovelware you can aim for. If you cater to an incredibly young audience, we're talking toddlers or so, then it's possible to get away with just using pointer controls and forego motion controls entirely. London Taxi Rush Hour, however, is the normal kind of Wii shovelware, so it does include motion controls. The only way to steer your car in this game is with motion controls, and there were no alternate control setups available, which is something that people who have played racing and driving games on the Wii should be incredibly familiar with by this point. And it isn't as though the controls or steering are terrible by themselves, but rather the physics in this game are terrible. That's the main problem here in London Taxi Rush Hour, is that they were a little too overzealous with their physics engine. And by their physics engine, I mean Havok, which they must not have utilized properly, because Havok can be a pretty solid physics engine. So while, as I stated, the motion controls for steering aren't necessarily bad, having to get used to motion controls over the standard joystick controls while the physics engine is actively working against you can be quite the challenge. Quite the blood-boiling, frustrating challenge. If you've played Crazy Taxi or the excellent Crazy Taxi clone, Simpsons Road Rage, then you're aware those games have a lot of physics as well. But in those games, the physics often favored the player, and it was always possible to easily get out of bad situations. You can't really push cars out of the way in this game like you think you should be able to. This wouldn't be so bad by itself if the cars weren't also excellent at causing pileups. All of the cars, the AI cars, seem completely blind to your existence. They don't react to you at all. It's like you're not even there to them. They also seem to go on a predetermined path regardless of what may be impeding them. If you're dedicated enough, you can even memorize all their predetermined paths. What's even worse is that sometimes their predetermined paths lead them to run straight into each other, sometimes clogging up entire roadways, making it impossible for you to pass, and having to go around an entire block. In a game such as this, which revolves around you reaching your destination as quickly as possible, that's not acceptable, and it makes the game almost unplayable. This isn't some kind of once-in-a-blue-moon issue either. There will frequently be multi-car pileups. And the very thing you figure the physics engine would be for, which is pushing cars out of the way, doesn't allow you to do that. In fact, not only do the physics disallow you from pushing cars out of the way properly, they also make it more difficult to back out of pileups, meaning that you're going to waste even more time trying to go around them because you'll be trapped. I'm not saying it's physically impossible to play the game well, but it would require memorizing passenger routes so thoroughly that it wouldn't be worth your time investment at all. So now that we've covered why this game is terrible and unplayable for the average consumer, and almost unplayable for everyone else, let's talk about the secondary mechanics. There's a boost meter that you can fill up by grabbing these orange cubes. You boost by flicking the Wiimote, and it makes the physics act even crazier than normal, so that's no good. The only thing I ever use it for is to grab these coins that are lined up across this wooden ramp. We'll get into why I keep doing that in a moment. Now, there are a couple of other secondary mechanics. There's your cleanliness meter for your taxi. down there by the boost gauge. What does it do? I don't know. Never found out. There's also a happiness meter whenever you pick up a passenger. What does the happiness meter do? I don't know. I've never bothered to find out. So now that we've covered the game's basic mechanics, you may wonder how I'm going to actually finish the game, given that I've just told you it's pretty much unplayable. Well, I pride myself in finding exploits, and you're witnessing one of them right now, and you have been for the last 4 minutes or so. In order to unlock all of the playable drivers, we need to grab these coins, the same ones that I've been getting for the last 4 minutes or so. Now, these coins are scattered everywhere throughout the map, so normally you'd have to go and search for them, but if you just keep restarting the map, then the coins will respawn near the start, and you can just keep grabbing those coins until you have a significant stockpile, which will then allow you to unlock the next driver. As near I can tell, none of the drivers actually control any differently. They seem to be entirely for cosmetic purposes, but I'm just going to keep grinding these coins until I get enough to unlock every driver. So if you want to know how to unlock all the drivers in London Taxi Rush Hour without wasting hours of your time exploring the entire map, just keep restarting the map and grabbing the coins right there to start. And I hear you saying, okay, so you found a way to complete the part of the game that isn't even part of the core gameplay. Big deal. How are you going to beat the part of the game that actually involves picking up and ferrying passengers? You made that sound pretty difficult. Well, thankfully I have an answer for that too. So let's just cut away from this grinding and skip straight to the main gameplay, where I actually do pick up my first and only passenger. So I've skipped ahead a little bit, and we're now in the core part of the gameplay. The stuff you're familiar with. We stop next to a passenger, they get in the taxi, and we have to ferry them to their location before time runs out. We also have an overarching goal. You may see a timer above the minimap. We need to get 250 euros before that timer runs out. And if we played this game the way it was intended to be played, then we would surely run out of time long before we collected the 250 euros total. But we're only going to bother picking up one passenger. If you recall correctly, I said that you'd need to memorize the route of every passenger to play this game well. But what if instead you found the passenger with the easiest route and you just kept picking up that passenger over and over because that passenger keeps respawning? And there you go, I've solved the London Taxi Rush Hour. If you want to complete this game, beat every game mode, you just have to keep picking up this same guy that I go back to pick up over and over. His route is really straightforward, there's plenty of time to do it, it's easy to memorize. And I'm thoroughly thankful that I managed to create such a low-effort solution to this game. Because I have tried to play this game the way it was intended, you know? Picking up a variety of passengers and delivering them all to their varied locations. And the thought of doing that again, frankly, makes my blood boil. Literally, just thinking about it right now makes me really, really upset. Anyway, you may or may not have caught back there that I said there were multiple game modes. This is one of the game modes, and it's the time trial mode, where you have to earn a certain amount of money before the time runs out. The second mode is exactly the same, but instead of the timer counting down, it counts up. No, I'm being serious, that's not an exaggeration or a joke. In this mode, the timer counts down from 8 minutes, and you have to collect enough money before the timer hits 0. In the second mode, the timer counts up to 10 minutes, and you have to collect enough money before the timer hits 10 minutes. So yes, they're the same game mode, the timer just goes in a different direction. And I don't even have the energy to be upset about how terrible that is. It's really bad though, let me be clear, that is disgustingly awful. So those are the first two game modes, but there is a third and final one. In the final game mode, you're tasked with delivering 10 passengers in a row without goofing up even once. There's no time limit for this one, but you can't fail once or else the mode ends. Fortunately, you don't have to deliver 10 different passengers. You can just deliver the same passenger to their destination 10 times. And I'm sure you can guess which passenger I chose. In fact, let's go ahead and go to that game mode right now, since it is the last piece of gameplay you're going to see before we end this whole mess. So I think we learned a lot here today, and there are some deep lessons to be taken from this. Some shocking moral revelations. Really put the whole world into perspective. At least, I hope there are lessons here. Otherwise, why did I just do this? Oh my god, what am I doing?